Hi, and welcome to this session where we're going to be looking at behaviour through a developmental lens. My name's Steve Russell, and I have to say it is a genuine pleasure to be able to share some thoughts with you, which will hopefully help you make even better sense of the behaviours that are perhaps causing you some concern, stress, anxiety, whether or not you're a parent or a professional working with children and young people in a setting such as a school, secure units, alternative provision, pupil referral units, children's homes, etc., etc. The idea then here is that what I want to do is to share with you a model called the cycle of development. It's based upon some work by someone called Jean Ilsley-Clark, and I want to give a particular reference to her. I think it's important that whenever I'm sharing ideas, that people are aware as to where it is that these ideas have come from. And Jean did a lot of work around essentially wanting to help parents and foster and adoptive parents to better understand why it is that their child or children behave in the ways that they do. And subsequently, various people, including myself, have picked up Jean's work and looked to apply it both within the home setting, but also looking at possible applications within schools and other settings, essentially where children and adults come together and try and make the best out of their time together, and where behaviour can get in the way of that. You have to hand the Behaviour Wall poster. Essentially what this resource is it's a visual representation of Jean's work on the cycle of development. And essentially the Behaviour Wall enables us to track a youngster's emotional and social development from the baby stage, which is the red layer of bricks on the wall, through toddlerdom, into early childhood, later child, and right through into the teenage years. So if we start with the red stage, the being stage, first visited between the ages of 0 to 6 months of age. And essentially what Jean has done here is to capture the essence of what happens as the baby comes out of the safety, security, warmth and familiarity of mum's womb into the big wide world. It's a scary place. And what the baby needs to do is to get a sense of who's out there for me, who's going to take care of me, who's going to be attuned to my needs. And so what does a baby do? Well, a baby cries because that is all they can do as they come out of the womb. And they cry in order to get the attention of the key carer, key carers. Remember, the key question here is, who is going to be there for me? Who will take care of me? And the baby crying, and indeed later on starting to smile and use their own facial gestures to grab the attention of the key carers. These are all ways in which the baby is communicating a set of developmental tasks, which are all around satisfying this hunger for contact. So you will see here the developmental tasks that the baby will instinctively, intuitively begin to grapple with. I won't read them out for you. Hopefully you will get a sense of the flavour, the intrinsic essence of what it is during these first 6 months that the baby needs to be doing. And where we talk about contact, essentially each developmental task has a psychological hunger that drives that task. And so the hunger that drives the being stage is the hunger for contact. Who can I trust? Who's going to provide me with that sense of safety, psychologically, emotionally, and indeed physically? Who am I going to attach to? And I'm sure that there are a number of people watching this who will be quite familiar with attachment theory, particularly those of you who have been on parenting courses or perhaps have gone through or going through the fostering and adoptive process. Attachment theory is a really key part of your training. And indeed, within schools, we're becoming more and more aware of the need to understand attachment theory and how it relates to the classroom. So this is where I want to make explicit reference to how, as I share the material, I'm going to seek to share it both from the point of view of what might be useful to parents and carers and what might be useful to professionals. When it comes to attachment theory in the school, what I have found is that over the many years now that I've been sharing this resource, the Behaviour Wall is a way of bringing attachment theory alive to class teachers, to teaching assistants, to those who would say, I am an educator, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychotherapist. What can I do about attachment theory? What you can do is, in actual fact, what you do when you meet and greet a youngster at the door, when you check in with them to see how they're doing. Those are all ways in which you are quite intuitively seeking to offer the youngster that sense of security, that secure base. So here we've got the developmental tasks that the baby will start to grapple with. And what's quite unique about Jean's work is that she doesn't just look at what the baby, or indeed the child during the later stages, does and needs. She also looks at what it is that we will do instinctively and intuitively to meet those needs. And so here we've got a picture, beautiful picture here of dad with a newborn. And as the baby cries, what the baby requires is for dad to be calm and to bring calm. In other words, to provide co-regulation. The baby can't calm itself down. We would never dream of telling a baby to go and sit down on the step or just put it in the cot and just essentially tell it to calm down. The baby is unable to do that. That's way beyond its developmental grasp. What the baby needs is to experience the calm dad, gentle, steady heart rate, nice tone of voice, the soothing, perhaps the blowing on the face, whatever it is that's going to sensorily help to provide a sense of co-regulation. And I'm talking here clearly about babies, and I would imagine that for some of you, you are thinking, well, although my youngster or my class are not at the baby stage, at times some of them, or my youngster at home, feels like they're at that baby stage. It's like they've regressed. So if that's your curiosity, check out these affirmations then. The affirmations are essentially the messages, these rich messages that will help to optimize, in this instance, the baby's developmental stage of the being stage, their developmental growth. So let's just stick with babies. As the baby gets picked up, cooch, 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 soothed, that's the way in which the adults, or indeed siblings, are sharing these affirmations. See these as a diet, and the richer the diet of affirmations, the more optimized the baby's development and growth will be through those first 6 months. What you need is important to us. We're glad you're here. You belong here. You can feel all of your feelings. We are big enough psychologically and emotionally to contain your feelings. We want you to be here and want to care for you. You can grow at your own pace. There is no rush. And of course, when a baby is around in the home, we're not rushing them through the milestones. We might get a bit anxious about milestones, but remember, for the first 6 months, it's all about attachment. And so we're talking about the baby here. And as I said a couple of minutes ago, you probably are not, predominantly those of you who are watching this, are not actually dealing with a baby at the moment. So in terms of how you might want to apply this material, a top tip, if you like, there's no magic wand, but look at these affirmations. And with the youngster that you've got in mind, which of these affirmations are they particularly hungry for? Hungry to experience more of. And they're hungry, and you know they're hungry because of their behavior. Their behavior is giving you a clue. All behavior is a form of communication, and in this instance, a communication of developmental need. So which of these affirmations are they particularly hungry for? How are you currently communicating those affirmations? What are you already doing? This is all around the relational stuff, isn't it? So whether or not you're a parent, carer, or professional, this, if you like, is the real grit as to what you do when you're interacting with youngsters, communicating that sense of unconditional positive regard, of belonging, of we are here for you. The next developmental stage, the doing stage. So you can see we're tracking the youngster now here from 0 to 6 months to 6 to 18 months of age. The doing stage is a really busy stage because, as you'll see from this picture, the very young toddler is wanting to get out and about in the world, to start to get a sense of the world around them and to develop their sensory awareness. So their fingers go into everything, and they'll go into plug sockets if we haven't covered them over. They'll go scrambling around. They'll start to make a beeline for the pen that's on the floor, or for the fire because of the glow of it. And of course, during this stage, the key job of the adults and carers is to both provide that stimulation and to keep them safe. And so we have a set of developmental tasks, the bricks from the behaviour wall here. Note that we've got a lot then around sensory awareness, getting out in the world, and also attachment continues to be a key feature and key need. Now, why was it that I decided to represent Jean's work as a wall? Well, I quite like the idea of foundations. And when we're thinking about a youngster's behavior, whatever their age is, it's a really good idea to check back at the really early developmental stages to see whether or not there might be some gaps in the wall. There might be some bricks that are either missing, or maybe they're there, but they're in a bit crankily. They're not securely in place. And when we look at the doing stage, this is the first stage where we can really start to clock how, if the youngster, for whatever reason, hasn't had a good enough diet of those beautiful, rich, red affirmations of you belong here, what you need is important to us, then they may well struggle to fully attend to this stage, the doing stage. Because if you think about it, a young toddler goes along to mums and toddlers groups or dads and toddlers groups, and they get put down on the floor with all these toys to play with. And all the toddler does is quickly reach out, fling up their arms and want to be held. In other words, they're communicating that need of security, of reassurance, the reassurance of, are you still there for me? I can't feel you because you're not holding me, but are you still there for me? And quite often what will happen is that the toddler will then go through that stage of flinging their arms up, being picked up, soothed, put down again, they fling their arms up, they almost get into a game of it. And then eventually they'll be able to sit there and they might just look and hold the adult's gaze without being held physically. That's the next stage of growth, of development. And then eventually they'll be able to sit there, play with the toys, with the adult close by them, and indeed then start to toddle out and perhaps play with other children away from the key carer. I'm going to talk a little bit later on about how this might play out within the classroom, within the home. But what I wanted to do was to emphasize how attachment is an ongoing process, and that without those red bricks securely in place, the youngster, whatever their age is, will struggle to go out in the world and explore, or indeed, for those of you working in classrooms, to learn. Thinking here about the pupil who you give them the task, you know they know what to do, and within 30 seconds, as soon as you leave their side, they fling their arms up and call out, "Miss, I don't know what to do." All behavior is a form of communication. What is it they're communicating? How do I, as the adult, steel myself from reacting out of frustration. Of course, you know what to do, Kieran. I've just explained it to you. You just need to have a go, and instead provide that reassurance and then move away. And as I say, I'm going to come on to some practical ideas around that a bit later on. So what affirmations does the 6 to 18-month-old need and benefit from? Well, here we go. You can be interested in everything. You can use all of your senses when you explore. We like to watch you grow and learn. You can know what you know. We're not putting limits on what it is that you're going to be learning about the world. Again, think of these as a diet. Now, for some youngsters, again, I'm thinking specifically here within the classroom because that's my most recent experience. I haven't had a toddler or indeed a young child in the house for quite a while now. But if we think about within the classroom, the youngster who is continually up and out of their seat and getting equipment and helping other children, this might be related to the hunger they have for stimulus. And within the home, the youngster who can't settle. I don't want to get into the whole realm of diagnoses here, but what I would say is that whilst it may well be that a diagnosis of ADHD is going to be helpful, it's also worth checking out, is it that rather than this being a medical condition, this is just simply something that the youngster needs to work through a bit more, that hunger for stimulus, to be active. And indeed, when I think about my elder son, he was always on the go, always on the go. And he didn't have an actual clinical diagnosis, and we didn't really need it necessarily. But as I say, I'm not wanting to discount the importance of diagnoses, just offering a different perspective on behaviour. So here's the diet of affirmations for the doing stage. Let's move on through now into the thinking stage. Oh, toddlerdom, well and truly, 18 months to 3 years of age. What we might call toddler tantrums going on, temper tantrums. Not really helpful as a way of making sense of the youngster's behaviour. Because when we talk about toddler tantrums, when we talk about temper tantrums, what we're doing, I would suggest, is discounting what needs are driving that behaviour. And when we discount the youngster's needs, I would suggest that we do them a disservice then. Because what we can see here as we go through the thinking stage is that this stage is all around the youngster starting to think of themselves as a separate entity from others. That's what G means by thinking in the thinking stage. In other words, the toddler starts to get a sense of, I've got my own needs, wants, desires and wishes, and they're different to yours. So Dad, you've said that it's tea time, but I'm really into my Postman Pat's toys. And I don't feel hungry. I don't have that sensation in my tummy that equates to hunger, which then means that I need food. But I can't express this in this rational way. But what I do learn is a 2-letter word very, very quickly, that 2-letter word being no. In that moment, was Thomas being rebellious? Was he being defiant? No, he wasn't. The fact that I framed it in that way said more about my own anxiety and insecurity as a new dad than about Thomas's behaviour. He was simply needing to express himself, this emerging self that's coming through. And it comes through the expression of these developmental tasks. Just to draw your attention at the bottom here, I deliberately put right in the centre to test reality, to push against boundaries and other people, because what toddler doesn't do that? To establish the ability to think for self over here. To express anger and other feelings. During this developmental stage, the toddler will start to get an idea as to what feelings are allowed within the family structure. Is it all right for me as a little boy to cry? Or do I pick up a message implicitly or explicitly? Big boys don't cry. What about for a girl, a little girl? Is it okay for them to express anger in that authentic way? Or does she instead learn that rather than expressing anger in the authentic way, what she does is she starts to cry? And it's not about faking sadness, but what she's learned is that when she cries, that's when she gets the adult coming to her and providing her with some support. Whereas for the little boy, when he feels sad and wants to cry, he might learn to layer over that feeling of sadness with anger, which is a bit of a bizarre one, because when he gets angry and throws a toy across the room or hits his brother, he will get told off, but at least he gets attention. And any attention is better than no attention at all. When I was working with the behaviour support service, I found that it's very helpful to look at anger management through the lens of the thinking stage. And was it that the lads who have been referred to me for anger management were actually struggling around feelings of sadness, of grief and loss? Perhaps grief and loss around a parental separation. And indeed, that was the case. When I carried out my own research into it, that was exactly the case. So I thought anybody here who is concerned about a child's expressions of anger might be worth just checking out. Is it all around anger, or is there also this sense of what's referred to as a racket feeling, a protection racket feeling of anger covering over the sadness? And you'll also see here that this is not only about the youngster becoming more separate, but also separating away from the key carers and getting their own sense of security, that they can be away from key carers and still feel safe and secure. And once again, it's a set of affirmations that will support the youngster through this developmental stage. Some of these are tough. It's okay for you to be angry. Tough as in, wow, okay, then as the adult, how do I communicate this? It's okay for you to be angry. You can say no and push the limits as much as you need to. That requires us to steel ourselves, doesn't it? But notice that there's an additional element to both of those affirmations. The element that provides the structure that is the core hunger throughout the thinking stage. The youngster needs to have that sense of boundaries. So it's okay for you to be angry, and we won't let you hurt yourself or others. This is not a model of laissez-faire parenting or laissez-faire pastoral care within the classroom or indeed the school of anything goes. But it is about giving permission for youngsters to express their authentic feelings. Because if we don't give them that permission, then they are going to start to develop what are sometimes referred to as maladaptive behaviors that perform a function of getting security, of getting attention, but don't actually help them in the long run. And similarly, you can say no and push the limits as much as you need to, and we will keep you and others safe as you do so. One of the biggest challenges for those working in schools and in classrooms is if a youngster has lost it, then in actual fact, there's not a lot more that we can do other than provide a place of safety for them and indeed for the rest of the class. And that may well mean that we have the rest of the class calmly removed. And yes, that is a big resource implication, but it is far better, safer, and I'd say healthier psychologically than trying to do battle, trying to get the youngster who has lost it to regain control of themselves with a whole load of other children milling around them. A few more affirmations here for you as well. Remember, this is about the emerging self. You can be yourself and we will still care for you. Even though you throw these tantrums in inverted commas, we will still care for you. I just want to give you a moment to be able to take a break from just staring at the screen there. I've spent quite a bit of time looking at these first 3 developmental stages. That's because if you come back to the idea of foundations, whenever I'm doing some work within a school or indeed with parents, some consultancy coaching work, and we're looking at behavior that is challenging, that is troubling or troubled behavior, I always get us to look back at those first 3 developmental stages. Which bricks are in place? First off, let's go for a strengths-based model here. And which ones might be out of place? Might the youngster need some more support with getting in place? How do they get those bricks in place? They get them in place through the diet of affirmations. So we build the interventions around the affirmations. And I'm going to explain that in a bit more detail in a moment or two. What I do need to do, though, is just to give you the heads up on the additional developmental stages. I'm going to whiz through this. You have got comprehensive information about these developmental stages, but essentially it is the same principle as before. In other words, each developmental stage has a set of developmental tasks, growing up jobs, and affirmations to support them through it. So let's just give you a quick flavor of each of the subsequent developmental stages. First off, we have the identity and power stage, first visited between the ages of 3 to 6 years of age. Who am I? What's my place in the world? What does it mean to be a boy or a girl, a man or a woman in the making? How do I get noticed around here? How does the hunger for recognition that drives this stage get satisfied? And throughout this stage, there's a lot of play, isn't there? Children get absorbed in stories, DVDs, and wanting to have the same story read over and over again. They might identify with a certain superhero or character in a story. And there's a set of affirmations that will support the youngster through this developmental stage. It's about who am I and how much power do I have to affect others and to find my place in a group. So some youngsters might be still struggling around that and might express their personal power in quite cranky ways. And as they move through the identity and power stage, they then move on to the skills and structure stage, 6 to 12 years of age, which is about getting on with others, developing the social skills needed to get on with others, developing resilience, being able to push on through, to make mistakes and bounce back from them. And the core hunger that drives this developmental stage is the hunger for excitement. And this stage, again, a set of affirmations about getting on with others, knowing that it's okay to be different, to hold a different point of view from others, and that it's okay to learn from their mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes and we can learn from them. We bounce back from them. So we've now actually, as we come to the end of the skills and structure stage, what we've done is from the being stage through to the skills and structure stage, we've looked at the first cycle of development, which gets rounded off in the teenage years. So the teenage years is sometimes referred to as the recycling stage, because what teenagers do is they go back and they revisit all of the early developmental stages, but at twice the pace and with the added ingredient of hormones. So if you think about it, what teenager does not go back to and revisit? I want to say revisit rather than regress, because how we frame behavior is really important, the words we use. What teenager does not go back to the being stage, revisit it, and become incredibly egocentric? It's all about them. They want food, they want money, they sleep at the oddest of times, they want lifts, and they have little, if any, awareness of the impact that their needs and wanting their needs met there and then has upon you as the parent, the carer, the teacher sometimes. So we can frame their behavior as a revisiting of the being stage. What teenager doesn't go back and revisit the doing stage? Remember, this is the exploration, sensory, fingers into everything, everything into their mouths. I will not go into what it is that teenagers do around exploration, but bearing in mind that one of the core hunger that drives the recycling stage is sex, then that might give us some clues into some of their behaviors and why they do what they do. As I say, hormones are driving this developmental stage. What teenagers do not go back and revisit the thinking stage, which is all around, remember, the emerging self, no. And it becomes far harder, in my experience, to deal with a teenager saying no than it does to a toddler saying no. It tests my mettle. How do I carry my authority as a dad now with a 14, 15, 16, 18-year-old than with a 3-year-old, which felt hard enough as it was at the time? Teenagers go back and revisit the identity and power stage. Who am I? Particularly around sexuality, maybe around gender as well, actually. They will be checking out, experimenting with different diets, for example, music, friendship groups. And of course, they are still tussling with the skills and structure stage, which is all around getting on with others and developing the resilience, the ability to bounce back from making mistakes. And what I say when I'm working with secondary colleagues is that when you think about all that you do around teaching the formal curriculum, and then throw into the mix developmentally what's happening, this cauldron of developmental tasks that need attending to, secondary schools do an amazing job to even get half of their students through half of their GCSEs and A-levels. The affirmations that will support the teenager through this developmental stage here, then we look forward to knowing you as an adult. In other words, we've got our eye on, we acknowledge that you are absolutely becoming an adult. You're not there yet, and that's where we get the conflict, isn't it? Whereby the teenager is basically saying, I will do what I want to do because I'm an adult now. I'm not a kid anymore. You can develop your own interests, relationships, and causes, and we trust you to ask for support when you need it. That can be a tricky growing point for us as parents, just to say. When our children become teenagers, and I'm thinking especially for myself, as my two lads at the age of 18 and 20 are very much now adults and living in the home at the moment due to COVID, really tricky to find that balance between I'm here for you as your dad, and I totally respect the fact that you are now your own fully functioning adult, and I'm going to trust that you'll ask for support when you need it, and I'll back off. I'm smiling here because I wonder whether or not, and perhaps just as well, I'm not in a room now, because the comment I'm going to make might be seen to be sexist. I don't mean it in this way, but I think sometimes mums can find it particularly challenging to let go, but not exclusively so, because as I say, I know I'm struggling with that myself at the moment. It brings me in actually to another element of Jean's work, whereby she talks about how parenting involves us in growing up again. So we the parents, the adults, grow up again, because as we go through the parenting process, those parenting years, we might become aware of some developmental tasks that we need to revisit, some affirmations that we might benefit from experiencing more of. So it's a cycle of development. Growing up takes a lifetime. Let's go easy on the children and young people in our care, but also go easy on ourselves if we're aware that some of our behaviours are perhaps linked with needing to go back and revisit ourselves. No one gets all they need the first time round in terms of the affirmations. No one. So this is not a deficit model. This is simply a recognition as to how tricky growing up is. We can all get more of what we didn't get enough of the first time round. So in other words, as children and young people go back and revisit the developmental stages, for example, during the teenage years, they have another shot at topping up their diet of affirmations. But it's not just during the teenage years that they revisit, as I'm going to come to in a moment, because times of change equal rich opportunities for revisiting the developmental stages. Here's the cycle of development. I'm going to take just one example of change and how it triggers off this revisiting. Let's take the example of a child moving from year 6 to year 7. They move school. For the year 6 moving into year 7, as they start school in September, and indeed beforehand when they're doing the orientation days, the transition days, they will go back and they'll be checking out being stage. Which adults in this new school will be looking after me, taking care of me? Who can I trust? The doing stage, exploration. Where are the different classrooms? Where's the dining hall? How long will it take me to get from the science block to the dining room? Because if it takes me too long, I'm going to end up at the back of the the back of the dinner queue. And if I end up at the back of the dinner queue, I won't there won't be any of the nice food left. They'll be checking out the thinking stage. What are the rules around here? How different are they from the primary school? Their sense of identity and power. I was at the top of the tree in primary school as a year 6. Now I'm at the bottom again. Who am I? Who am I in this new school? How much power do I have? And needing to reorientate themselves as they are now faced with new peers, as they get put into form groups, into subject classes, having to get on with a new set of children. So the teenage years triggers off that revisiting, as does moving school, as does moving house, as does perhaps parents separating, or a new baby, a new addition to the family. So if you're thinking about behavior from the developmental perspective, it might be worth checking out what changes have been occurring. COVID, we haven't got time to get into this, but think about all of the changes that have been occurring as a result of COVID, and how maybe some of our children and young people, in fact, not maybe, some of them are expressing their developmental needs through their behavior as a result of living through this pandemic. Before I move into the final set of slides, a couple of further thoughts here. A key mantra that you might want to bear in mind is it's the stage, not the age, that counts. So when you're thinking about the youngster's behavior, forget about the chronological age. This can be tricky whether or not you're a parent or indeed a teacher. They're year 6s. They should know how to behave. They know how to behave. Yeah, they might know it, but some of them might still be struggling developmentally. They might need a top-up of some of those affirmations. So it's the stage, not the age, that counts. And within this, to consider when you're looking at and scratching your head over a youngster's behavior, is it that they won't do what they're told? Or is it that they can't? This for me was a revelation to start to frame behavior through the lens of can't versus won't. If it's that they won't, then that requires a particular approach, which is around holding firm to the boundaries, but also expressing empathy, understanding to the youngster. If it's that they can't, then that would be indicative of a skills deficit. What skill does the youngster need to learn, which in itself will take time, in order to then be able to behave in the appropriate ways? So let's have a look at one or two very practical examples. It's going to be quite quick, this, I'm afraid, because of time, around how some additional ways in which the material can be applied. So the youngster who is calling out or can't be left, for example, within the home situation, perhaps calling out all the time, cannot bear for mum or dad at home to be away from them, not by their side. Is it attention-seeking behaviour, or can we reframe that as attention-needing, or indeed connection-seeking? It's the hunger for contact that's driving that behaviour. Back to the being stage, which affirmations will support the youngster during that developmental stage? We've got them down there. How might we do that? Here are some ideas, particularly within the classroom. I'm thinking here, the meet and greet at the beginning of the day. How important that is for some youngsters to have that explicit sense of, you've noticed me. Or indeed at home, particularly if you are juggling, perhaps having to look after several children within your family, and you know that one of them, they need you to go to them first. And then that will start to soothe them. It provides that co-regulation for them. Checking in with the youngster during the day, during the lesson, during the evening at home, holding them in mind, letting them know that we've been thinking about them even when we haven't been with them. Use of the sound timer. I won't go into this actually because of time, but if you're interested in how you can apply this, for example, particularly within the classroom, please do feel free to get in touch with me. I'm going to leave my contact details at the end of this session. But essentially what we do then is that we provide that sense of security for the youngster. If it's attention-seeking behavior, reframe it as attention-needing, and let's keep away from the more punitive approaches that we might feel that we need to do if we are framing it as attention-seeking. What about the youngster who tips tables over, destroys property? I know I've worked with parents who are at their wits' end because when their child gets into that dysregulated state, they will destroy their bedroom. And I think that this is in part around perhaps needing boundaries, but I would also stress first point of call is contact. It's about, again, that co-regulation. So for me, emphasis upon coming alongside the youngster, communicating those affirmations. I relate to the youngster. I offer co-regulation. Then later on, when the youngster is much calmer, we get into the reasoning and then the repair. Teachers especially, don't go too quickly into the reasoning. Why did you do what you did there? We relate, we regulate, then reason. The repairing comes much later on. And for some youngsters, because of shame, they will not be able to engage in the repairing, to take responsibility. That's why they lie about what they did. It's too painful to acknowledge what they did, because it's actually confirming to them that they are a bad person. Doing a risk assessment, really important. Few more ideas here. We haven't got time to get into this. If indeed any of this you're thinking, I'd like to know more about that, please do get in touch with me. I've got handouts and I'm more than happy to get into email conversations as well around it. So that brings us to the end of this session. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope you've been able to take away something of use to you. Please feel free to get in touch with me. My contact details will come up in a moment. If you're part of or you're aware of parent support groups or charities that work with families around children and behaviour, I am very, very happy to send out resources at no charge. If you work within a school, a PRU, or for example, a children's home, and you'd like to have a chat with me about how I might be able to support you in enhancing your relational approaches to behaviour, again, I'd be more than happy to have that conversation with you. And linked in with this, actually, the Behaviour Wall, as well as being a poster, it will be going out live as a website and essentially will be an IEP writer for schools and other settings to be able to really fine-tune their approaches around behaviour by being able to type in a behaviour causing concern. It will then automatically select bricks and affirmations for you. And there's a whole bank of resources in terms of strategies and targets that you'll be able to select and then create an individual education or support plan for your pupils. So as I say, that's coming out in the summer term, all being well. And if you're interested in that, do drop me a line. So stay safe, look after yourselves, and keep well.
Hey, it's Ian here at Studio TV. Thank you so much for joining us here at Getting It Right for Me Live. Let me ask you a really quick question. Are you here because you are hoping to develop your skills and your knowledge and all your learning and understanding around supporting and caring for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities? I assume that's what you've come here for. We hope that you're enjoying your time here with us. There's some amazing people, and we're so grateful for them coming and being part of this. And we're so grateful for you to be joining us as well. There's a couple of things I just really quickly wanted to introduce you to. First of all, don't forget that you can upgrade your ticket at any time to one of the paid tickets, which we try to keep the price as low as we possibly can, just to cover what we need to help out the speakers a little bit and make sure this event is as good as it can be. What that means is you can access the live Q&A sessions that we're running throughout the event, and you can access all the sessions for up to a year afterwards if you buy one of those paid tickets. Check out the whole school ones. How that works is if you book a whole school ticket, and you can pay online, or you can drop us a line and we'll issue an invoice and we'll sort it all out. That's absolutely fine. But we'll then make it possible for all your staff to be able to access all the sessions here at Getting It Right for Me Live this year. So do hope that's helpful. The other thing I want to mention is, and there are lots of members joining us this week, so thank you so much to those of you who are members, but we have put together, if you're looking to go deeper and access ongoing support and help and training, either as an individual, as a parent, as a professional supporting someone with additional needs, in a school or educational setting, or from a professional point of view, we have put together here at Studio TV with Lynn McCann and her team at Reach Out ASC a fantastic membership that starts at just £10 a month and includes a wide range of courses to help you support those in your care. There's a load of resources and tools, printable things that you can use to work with those children, support them. And there's more content being added all the time. One of my favorite parts of the membership is there is a peer group community that's built into that. So you can ask questions of Lynn and her team and your peers, built right into that membership as well. As I say, it starts at just £10 a month. Whole school memberships are there. We're offering trust-wide memberships, and local authorities have started to get in touch and offer this to their staff across a range of schools as well. We would love for you to join our community. If you've got any questions on that, drop us a line, but very much hope to see you there. And thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the event.